Everybody. This is 8th grade literature for Monday, April 27th. You should have read the second portion of the myth of Theseus for today and taken the quiz on that. It was page 157. Oh, nope, that's wrong. 155 through 164, almost 10 pages. So if you have not done that yet, please pause the video and go back and read the myth, take the quiz, and then come back for the review. Okay, so Theseus had left for Athens when we finished the first portion of the story. He arrives there and finds his father. As you recall, his father is a king, but the kingdom is actually run by his father's brother, because his father's brother has 50 warrior sons. So his uncle is the one who's in power. His father's kind of lives in fear for his life all the time. And of course, Theseus now that he knows what he's able to do and the fact that he's actually the son of Poseidon, he's ready for a challenge. So he tries to encourage his father to fight his uncle and their 50 sons, but his father doesn't want to hear anything about it. So the other thing that Theseus becomes interested in when he hears about it is Athens has been defeated by Crete. And so Crete, I forgot to turn, thank you. And so Crete demands tribute from Athens every year. 7 of the most beautiful maidens and 7 of the strongest young men are taken from Athens. They go to Crete, where they are offered as a sacrifice to the Minotaur, because Crete has defeated Athens. So Theseus volunteers to go along as one of the seven young men. His father doesn't want to at first, but he keeps begging and pleading and pushing, and finally his father agrees. And his father asks only that if he survives, that Theseus gives him a sign on the return trip. The ships sail with black sails because it's kind of like a sad mourning kind of journey. But if Theseus succeeds and comes back alive, his father tells him he'll watch every evening for the ship's return. So if Theseus succeeds, he's supposed to put a white sail up so that from a distance his father knows that he survived the challenge. In Athens, on the way to Athens, Theseus tells his fellow young men, 7 young men, remember 7 young ladies, he tells them that they're not to look at themselves as victims, but rather that they're on a warrior mission. And he trains them in this style of fighting that he learned from the gull in the first part of the story, using your enemy's strengths against them. So he teaches them how to wrestle and fight that way. And they really take to it well, and they become a pretty organized army, ready for a challenge once they get to Crete. Theseus's thinking is that maybe together they'll be able to defeat the Minotaur. So he also, once they arrive there, and normally, they would be taken captive and prisoner right away, but he takes his ship and he puts it in the entrance to the harbor, which is kind of a narrow entrance. And he says that if King Minos won't agree to see him, he will wreck the ship right there, which will ruin trade for Crete because ships won't be able to get in and out of the harbor. So Minos has to give him an audience and listen to Theseus. And this impresses Minos to a certain extent. So Minos and Theseus meet. Let's see. So Theseus makes his request that Minos stop this 14-person tribute that Athens has to pay Crete, this sacrifice, because it only calls to attention the fact that Minos has this Minotaur for a son, and that his wife, had this thing for the great white bull that she spent time with. And Theseus also tells Minos that he's thinking that he'd like to pattern his career after Minos. So Minos again is very impressed. He has noticed that his oldest daughter seems interested in Theseus. So he offers Theseus her hand in marriage, and Minos would, for the most part, adopt Theseus, and he could become king when Minos passes away. But this isn't what Theseus has come for. He's focused on killing the Minotaur. And then Minos says, well, I suppose you probably think you're the son of some god, because Minos himself, remember, is the son of Zeus. And so Theseus admits, yes, he's the son of Poseidon. So Minos proves he's the son of Zeus by going out on the balcony and raising his arms to the sky and asking Zeus to send a sign, and lightning flashes and thunder crashes. Then he asks Theseus to show some sign that he's the son of Poseidon. He throws his crown into the water, kind of like off of a cliff there that the palace is built on the top of, and it plunges deep into the water. And so without any hesitation, Theseus dives after it, praying to Poseidon for help. And he finds, once he's underwater, kicking to the bottom, when he can no longer breathe, normally he would suffocate, he finds that he can breathe air underwater. Poseidon has given him that possibility. So he returns Minos's crown to him. So when we leave off in this section, Minos has become impressed, like I said, with Theseus, but he realizes he's also dangerous, because if he succeeds in killing the Minotaur, he's going to be a hero. He'll go back to Athens, raise the forces there, and maybe challenge Crete. So he doesn't give Theseus and his comrades the usual weapons that the group is given when they go in to meet the Minotaur. He's sent in with just his bare hands, but Theseus is fine with that. So the third part of the story is what you're reading for Tuesday. That would be page 164 through the end 171. Read that and take the quiz before you watch Tuesday's video. We had gotten as far as, let's see, the cattle of the sun, I think. Oh yeah, when we left off, Theseus now, his last ship has been wrecked. All his men have been killed. And he's riding the wreckage of his ship. And that brings us to the next section of the Adventures of Ulysses, which is called Calypso. I'm going to read part of that today because it's kind of a long one. When Ulysses awoke, he found himself lying on a bed of sweet-smelling grass. The sun shone hotly, but he was in a pool of delicious, cool shade under a poplar tree. He was still dizzy. The trees were swaying, and the bright flowers danced upon the meadow. He closed his eyes, thinking, I must be dead then. The god that hunts me took pity and shortened my hard life, and I am now in the Elysian fields. You remember from the earlier story that they believe that most people who went to the underworld, regular people, just end up in the fields of Asphodel, which are just, it's kind of a gray, misty, not much going on area. But heroes, great heroes and people who accomplish great things go to a special place. It's sort of, I guess, their version of heaven, called the Elysian Fields. A voice answered him, you have not died. You are not in the Elysian Fields. You have come home. He opened his eyes again. A woman was bending over him. She was so tall that he knew she was no mortal woman, but nymph or nereid or demigoddess. She was clad in a short tunic or of yellow and purple. Her hair was yellow and long and thick. You are here with me, she said. You have come home. Home? Is this Ithaca? Are you my wife Penelope? This is Ogygia, and I am Calypso, she said. He tried to sit up. He was too weak. But Ithaca is my home, and Penelope is my wife. Home is where you dwell, and wives, I am told, often change, especially for sailors, and especially for you. Now you belong to me, because this island and everything on it is mine. Ulysses went back to sleep, for he believed he was dreaming, and he didn't wish to wake up again and find himself still on the raft. When he awoke, he was still in his dream. He was strong enough now to sit up and look around. He was in a great grove hemmed by trees, alder and poplar and cypress. Across this meadow 4 streams ran. crossing each other, making a sound like soft laughter. The meadow was a carpet of wildflowers, violets, parsley, bluebells, daffodils, and cat-faced pansies. His bed had been made in front of a grotto he saw. Over it, a wild grapevine had been trained to fall like a curtain. The vine curtain was pushed aside and Calypso came out. You are awake, she cried, just in time for your wedding feast. The stag has been roasted, the wine has been poured. No, don't move, you're still too weak. Let me help you, little husband. She scooped and lifted him into her great white arms and carried him as easily as though he were a child in the grotto and set him before the hearth. A whole stag was spitted over the flame. The cave was carpeted with the skins of leopard and wolf and bear. Lovely and gracious goddess, said Ulysses, tell me, please, how I came here. The last I remember, I was on my raft, and then a blackness fell. I was watching for you, said Calypso. I knew you would come, and I was waiting. Then your raft floated into sight. I saw you slump over and roll off the raft. I changed you into a fish, for sharks live in this water, and they're always hungry. As soon as I turned you into a fish, a gull swooped, and he would have had you too, but I shot him with my arrow. Then I took my net and fished you out, restored you to your proper shape, fed you a broth of herbs, and let you sleep. That was your arrival, O man, that I have drawn from the sea. As for your departure, that will never be. Now eat your meat and drink your wine, for I like my husbands well fed. Ulysses ate and drank and felt his strength returning. All right, he thought, things could be worse. In fact, they could be much worse. This may turn out to be quite a pleasant interlude. She's certainly beautiful, this Calypso, rather large for my taste and inclined to be bossy, I'm afraid, but nobody's perfect. He turned to her, smiling, and said, you say you were watching for me, watching for my raft. How did you know I would be coming? I am one of the Titan brood, said Calypso, the daughter of mighty Atlas, who stands upon the westward rim of the world, bearing the sky on his shoulders. We are the elder branch of the gods, we Titans. For us there is no before or after, only now, wherein all things are and always were and always will be. Time, you see, is a little arrangement that man has made for himself to try to measure the immeasurable mystery of life. It doesn't really exist. So when we want to know anything that has happened in what you call before, or what will happen in what you call after, we simply shuffle the pictures and look at them. I don't think I understand, Ulysses said. I have watched your whole voyage, Ulysses. All I have to do is poke the log in a certain way and pictures form in the heart of the fire and burn there until I poke the log again. What would you like to see? My wife Penelope, Ulysses answered. Calypso reached her long arm and poked the log, and in the heart of the flame Ulysses saw a woman weaving. She looks older, Ulysses said. You've been gone a long time. Only the immortals do not age. I was 2,300 years old yesterday. Look at me. Do you see any wrinkles? Poor Penelope, said Ulysses. Don't pity her too much. She's got plenty of company. She's presumed to be a widow, you know. Has she married again? Ulysses asked. I weary of this picture. Would you like to see another? I'd like to see my son Telemachus. She poked the fire again, and Ulysses saw the flickering image of a tall young man with red gold hair. He held a spear in his hand and looked angry. How he has grown, murmured Ulysses. He was a baby when I left. He's a young man now, and a fine one, is he not? Looks like his father, said Calypso. He seems to be defying some enemy, said Ulysses. What's happening? He's trying to drive away his mother's suitors who live in your castle now. She's quite popular for an older woman, but then, of course, she has land and goods. She's a rich widow. You left her well provided, O sailor. She has many suitors and can't decide among them, or perhaps she enjoys their courtship too much to decide. But your son is very proud of his father, whom he does not remember, and seeks to drive the suitors from your castle. I better go home and help him, said Ulysses. Put that out of your mind, said Calypso. It simply will not happen. Forget Ithaca, Ulysses. You are a hero, a mighty hero, and heroes have many homes, and the last is always the best. Look at this. See some of your exploits. Like many warriors, you were too busy fighting to know what really happened. She poked the log again and again, and a stream of pictures flowed through the fire. Ulysses saw himself standing on a rock in the Cyclops' cave, holding the white-hot sword above the giant's sleeping eye, preparing to stab it in. He saw himself wrestling with the leather bag of winds that Aeolus had given him, saw himself running with the wolves and lions who had been Circe's lovers in the dark courtyard of her castle. Then, sword in hand, he saw himself hacking at Scylla's tentacles as she reached across the tilting deck for his men. Going back, he saw himself before his homeward voyage, crouched in the black belly of the wooden horse that he had made. Next, climbing out of that horse after he had been dragged into the city and racing with lifted sword to slaughter the sleeping Trojan warriors. And as he watched and saw the old battles being refought, the men who had been his friends and the monstrous enemies he had overcome, Ulysses' heart sang with pride, and a drunken warmth stronger than the fumes of wine rose in his head, drowning out all these pictures of home. He stood up and said, "Thank you for showing me myself, Calypso. I do seem to be a hero, don't I? And worthy to love the daughter of a Titan." "Yes," she Calypso answered. Check how much more we've got in this one. Now Calypso had amused herself with shipwrecked sailors before, but she was hard to please, and none of them had lasted very long. When she got tired of someone, she would throw him back into the sea. If she was feeling good-natured, she would change him to a gull or a fish first. Indeed, the trees of the grove were filled with nesting seabirds, gull and heron, osprey and sand owls, who called to her at night, reproaching her. "What is the clamor of all these birds?" said Ulysses. "Oh, they're just birds. Why do they shriek so much? They're angry at me for loving you. They were men once like yourselves. How did they get to be birds?" "Well, it's not a very difficult transformation when you know how to do it. I thought they would be happier this way." "They don't sound very happy." "Well, they have jealous natures." "You're not unlike Circe in some ways," said Ulysses. "You island goddesses are apt to be abrupt with your former friends. I've noticed this." "It's a depressing topic, dear," Calypso said. "Let's talk about me. Do you find me more beautiful today?" "More beautiful than yesterday, if that's possible," said Ulysses. No doubt you will find me even lovelier. No doubt you will find me even lovelier tomorrow, since you have shown me the penalty of any inattention." Do not fear," said Calypso. "You're not like the others. You are bolder and have more imagination. You are a true hero. Perhaps you could persuade your feathered friends to nest elsewhere. They make me nervous." "Nothing's easier. I shall simply tell them to depart. If they don't, I will change them all to grasshoppers, except for one, who will eat the rest of them and die of overeating." "Truly you are wise and powerful and fair beyond all women, mortal or immortal," said Ulysses. She smiled. "You have such an apt way of putting things," she said. So Ulysses made himself at home on the island and passed the time hunting game, fishing the sea, reveling with the beautiful Calypso. He was happy. Thoughts of home grew dim now. The nymph taught him how to poke the magic log upon her hearth so it would cast up fire pictures. And he sat by the hour on the great hearth, reading the flickering tapestry of days gone by and days to come. But she instructed the log never to show him any more scenes of Ithaca, his home, for she wished him not to be reminded of his home in any way, lest he be tempted to depart. But Ulysses was as crafty as she was, and after he had poked the log many times, asking it to show him what was happening on his island, his home, and the log had cast up pictures of other times, other places, he realized Calypso had laid a magic veto upon the scenes of home. This, instead of making him forget, made him more eager than ever to know what was happening with Telemachus and Penelope, his son and wife. One day he went into the woods, snared a sea crow, and asked, "Can you speak?" "Yes," said the crow. "Were you once a man?" "Once. At the time of your grandfather Sisyphus, I was a clever man and a spy. That's why Calypso changed me into a crow when she grew weary of me. For all creatures are the best, for of all creatures, we, crows, are the best for spying and prying and tattling." "Then you're the bird for me," said Ulysses. "Listen, I wish you to fly to Ithaca. Go to my castle and see what's happening, and then come back and tell me." "Why should I?" "What will you give me?" said the crow. "Your life." "My life? I already have that." "But not for long, because if you refuse to do as I ask," said Ulysses, "I shall wring your neck." Said the crow. "There's merit in your argument. Very well, I shall be your spy, only don't let Calypso know. She'll catch me and feed me to the cat before I can report to you. I have a notion she'd like you to forget Ithaca." "Fly away, little bird," said Ulysses, "and do what you have to do. I'll take care of things here." The next day at dusk, as he was returning from the hunt, he heard the crow calling from the depths of an oak tree. "Greetings," said Ulysses. "Have you done what I asked?" "I've flown to Ithaca," said the crow. "A rough journey by sea, not really so far as the crow flies. I flew to your castle and perched in an embrasure and watched and watched. Briefly, the news is your son is grieving, your wife is weaving, and your guests are not leaving." "Why does my wife weave? What does my wife weave?" said Ulysses. "Your shroud, your burial cloth." "Has she decided so soon I am dead? I have been gone scarcely 20 years." She's faithful, Ulysses, but the suitors, who are brawling, ill-mannered young men, are pressing her to choose one of them for a husband. However, she refuses to choose until she finishes the shroud. And it's been 3 years she's been weaving. For each night she rips up the work she's done during the day, so the shroud never gets finished. She's stalling. But the suitors are growing impatient. They're demanding that she finish her weaving and choose a groom. Your son opposes them, and they threaten to kill him unless he steps aside. Thank you, Crow, said Ulysses. What will you do now? Try to escape? Escape? I do not consider myself a captive, good bird. I shall simply inform Calypso I intend to leave and ask her to furnish transportation. You make it sound easy, said the crow. Good luck, and he flew away. Okay, so we'll stop there and we'll finish it tomorrow. All right, so for Tuesday then, again, read the last session, finish Theseus, take the quiz on it, and watch for the video that has, or the email that has the link about the video for Tuesday. Thanks for watching.